Greetings from Brother Stephen. I'm a disciple and witness of Jesus Christ to all the inhabitants of the earth. I present to you as a witness this gospel of the kingdom. In this lesson today, titled Barabbas Chosen, we will be going over Matthew chapter 27, verses 15 through 23. This testimony is recorded in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, so we will be going over all of those testimonies today to give the full scope of what happened when Barabbas was chosen over Jesus. Beginning with Matthew chapter 27, verses 15 to 23. This subsection of scripture in the King James Version Bible is known as the crowd chooses Barabbas. Verse 15 says, "Now at that feast, the governors was willing to release unto the people a prisoner whom they would." In other words, whom they chose. And we go to Mark chapter 15, verses 6 through 11. This is Mark's testimony of when the crowd chooses Barabbas. "Now at that feast he released unto them one prisoner, whomsoever they desired. And they had then a notable prisoner called Barabbas." Now, the name Barabbas is actually Hebrew, and it derives from two Hebrew words. The first is bar, which means sons, and Abagath. And Abagath is a name mentioned one time in the Old Testament. If you go to Esther chapter 1, verses 10 through 12, this is when Queen Vista's refusal. Verse 10 says, "On the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Bazath, Harbona, Begath, and Abagath, Zethra, and Caucus, the seven chamberlains." Now this word chamberlains come from the Hebrew word sares, which is translated to the modern day word eunuch. It says that served in the princes of Ahasuerus the king. If you go to Matthew chapter 19, verses 12, it talks a little bit more about eunuchs. I'll go over this in the study titled Marriage and Divorce Precepts when I cover Matthew chapter 19, verses 1 to 12. Verse 12 says, "For there are some eunuchs which are born from their mother's womb, and there are some eunuchs which are made eunuchs of men, and there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs." And eunuchs means to be castrated or born with a sexual organ that is neither male nor female. And it says, again, "They have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it." And again, I'll go over this in detail in the study titled Marriage and Divorce Precepts. Now, I don't believe the name of Barabbas have anything to do with eunuchs. I'm just giving you a little history about where the name comes from in the Old Testament. And again, Barabbas names derive from the name Abagath. Now, when you separate again the name Barabbas, it comes from two Hebrew words. That first word is bar, which means son, and Abagath, which means God-given. Now, when you take the name Barabbas together, it means son of a father. So if you just, again, we're going to separate the Barabbas. When you have Barabbas together, it's son of a father. But then when you separate bar from Abagath, you have son, and then the meaning of Abagath is God-given. So you have the son of God-given. And again, that is what the name of Barabbas means. It's the son of God given. And another thing that I want to point out this is the name of Barabbas in ancient in modern Hebrew. And when you translate modern Hebrew back to ancient Hebrew, it is the plan from the beginning, or the plan for the Son. It's God's plan to carry the cross is God. So again, when you look at the name of Barabbas, it actually talks about this is part of God's plans from the beginning, that Christ will be the one crucified and not Barabbas. When you go to 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 20, it says, but with the precious blood of Christ, as of a lamb without blemish and without spot, who verily was foreordained. This means planned before the foundations of the world. So again, you have that planned from the beginning. The symbol for rush in the ancient Hebrew is like the head or face of a man, and it represents either son or beginning. And again, the scriptures in 1 Peter 1:20 says, but was manifest in these last times for us. We're back at Mark chapter 7. It says, and there was one named Barabbas, which was bound with him. And remember, when we say bound, they was bound to a jabbeth, which is the top portion of the cross. And again, and there was one named Barabbas, which was bound with them, that caused insurrection with him. Now, the King James Version Bible, this is a false translation. It does not say insurrection with him, though these words with him is added. They do not appear in the Greek manuscripts. And this 3 words, intersection with him, just derives from one Greek word. And when you translate that Greek word to English, it means he caused a rebellion, who had committed murder in the rebellion. And the multitude, crying aloud, began to desire him to do as he had ever done unto them. Now, verse 8, when it said that the multitude was crying aloud, began to desire of him, they're talking about of Pilate, to do as he had done in the past. And basically what that's talking about, if you go back to Mark chapter 15 and 8, it talks about how Pilate released unto them one prisoner. Luke chapter 23 verses 13 to 25. Again, this is Luke, the physician's testimony of the crowd chooses Barabbas. Verse 13 says, and Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, said unto them, you have brought this man unto me as one that pervert the people. And behold, I have examined him before you. I have found no fault in this man, touching those things whereof you accuse him. No, nor yet Herod. For I sent you unto him, and lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. I will therefore whip him and release him. Verse 17 says, for of necessity he must release one of them at the feast. So Pilate was trying to release Jesus. We have verse 17 in Matthew. It says, therefore, when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, whom will you that I release unto you, Barabbas or Jesus, which is called Christ? And again, the Son of God. Verse 9 in Mark, but Pilate answered them, saying, will you that I release unto you the king of the Judeans? For he knew that for envy they had delivered him. For he knew that the chief priests had delivered him for envy, but the chief priests moved the people that he should rather release Barabbas unto them. And they cried out all at once, saying, away with this man, and release unto us Barabbas, whom for a certain sedition. Now this word sedition is the same word Um, it derived from the same word that they translated insurrection from, and again, it just means like rebellion for a certain sedition or rebellion made in the city, and for murder was cast into prison. When he was set down on the judgment seat, his wife, and again, this is talking about Pilate, when Pilate was set down on his judgment seat, his wife sent unto him, saying, Have you nothing to do with this just man? For I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of him. Pilate, therefore, willing to release Jesus, spake again unto them. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor answered and said unto them, Whether of the twine will you that I release unto you? They said, Barabbas. Pilate said unto them, What should I do with with Jesus, which is called Christ? They all say unto him, Let him be crucified. Verse 21 in Luke, but they cried, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. And the governor said, Why? What evil hath he done? But they cried out the more, saying, Let him be crucified. And he said unto them the third time, Why? What evil hath he done? I have found no cause of death in him. I will therefore whip him and let him go. And they were instant with loud voices requiring that he might be crucified, and the voices of them and of the chief priests prevailed. And Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. And he released unto them him that for rebellion and murder was cast into prison, whom they had desired, and he delivered Jesus to their will. In other words, to be crucified. I want to close this lesson out reading John chapter 15, verses 18 to 27. Is known as the hatred of the world. I'm just going to read verses 18 through 21. It says, If the world hate you, you know that it hated Jesus before it hated you. If you were of the world would love his own. But because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hate you. Remember the word that I have said unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. When you go back to Matthew chapter 10, verses 16 to 25, this subsection of scripture is known as comfort and persecution. I just want to read verses 24 and 25. It said, The disciple is not above his master, nor the servant above his Lord. It is enough for the disciple that he be as his master, and the servant as his Lord. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more shall they call them of his household? If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also. But all these things will they do unto you for my name's sake, because they know not him that sent me. And this concludes this gospel.